I said, "You're not my type." She tilted her head and replied, "Then I'll change." The broken machine. The asteroid station Helios 7 hummed with the monotonous drone of industrial machinery, a sound Cade Mercer had learned to love more than any human voice. Out here, 3 months' travel from Earth, machines didn't lie, didn't leave, and didn't break your heart, at least not in ways that couldn't be fixed with the right tools. He was shoulder deep in a coolant recycler when the alarm screamed through the maintenance bay. Unidentified object. Sector 7, the station AI announced in its maddeningly calm tone. Collision imminent, Cade swore, wiping grease from his hands as he pulled up the external feeds on his wrist display. A small courier pod tumbled through the asteroid field, trailing debris and plasma. It wasn't broadcasting any identification codes, which meant either pirates or something worse. "Let it crash," he muttered, turning back to his work. But the pod didn't crash. It fired emergency thrusters at the last second, slamming into the station's outer docking ring with enough force to rattle tools off the walls. Cade felt the impact through the floor. 20 minutes later, he stood at the emergency airlock, plasma cutter in hand, staring at the crumpled pod. Station protocol said wait for the security team, but Helios 7's security team consisted of one retired soldier who was currently 3 drinks into his evening shift. Cade cut through the seal. Smoke poured out, acrid and strange. Inside the pod's cramped interior, surrounded by shattered equipment, sat a figure slumped against the wall. At first glance, she looked human. Delicate features, long dark hair, a slender frame, and a fitted silver bodysuit. Then she lifted her head and Cade's breath caught. Her skin was a soft, luminous purple like twilight-made flesh. Her eyes opened, revealing irises that shifted between violet and gold. She blinked at him, disoriented, and when she spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality that seemed to resonate in his chest. Destination, compromised, systems, failing. Her words came haltingly, as if language was something she had to remember how to do. Cade had seen alien tech before. Hell, half the station ran on Celestian engineering, but he'd never seen one of their synthetics up close. The Celestian Empire built androids so sophisticated they could pass for organic life, designed to study other species while remaining perfectly controlled. This one was clearly malfunctioning. "Can you walk?" he asked, keeping his distance. She tried to stand, stumbled, and caught herself against the pod's frame. Cade noticed the tremor in her hands, the way her pupils dilated and contracted arrhythmically. "Definitely damaged. I am Zara," she said, her voice stabilizing. "Observational Envoy Class 7. My primary function is to study human emotional patterns and social bonds." She focused on him with unsettling intensity. "You are experiencing wariness, suspicion, but also curiosity." "Congratulations, you can read a room," Cade said dryly. "Your ship's wrecked and you're leaking hydraulic fluid. I'll call your people, get you picked up." "No." The word came out sharper than before. I need to complete my observation period. I was sent to understand human connection, companionship, the bonds that form between individuals." Cade almost laughed. Of all the stations in all the asteroid belt, this synthetic had crashed on the one run by a man who'd given up on connection years ago. After Maya died, cancer quick and cruel, he'd sold everything, bought a ticket to the furthest posting he could find, and buried himself in work that required nothing but technical skill. "Then you came to the wrong place, sweetheart," he said. "I'm not your guy." Zara tilted her head, studying him with those strange, shifting eyes. Something in her expression changed, a flicker of determination. Or maybe just a glitch in her programming. "You are not compatible with my observational parameters," she said slowly, as if testing the words. "You maintain emotional distance. You have isolated yourself deliberately." She paused, and then, impossibly, she smiled. "But perhaps that makes you perfect. Because if I can understand you, I can understand anyone." Cade turned to leave. "Good luck with that." "Wait." Her voice stopped him. When he glanced back, she had straightened, and despite the damage to her systems, despite the way her hands still trembled, there was something almost vulnerable in the way she looked at him. "Your assessment is correct. I am not what you would choose. I am not your type." "No," he agreed. "You're not." Zara's expression shifted again. That same analytical look, but now colored with something else. Something that looked almost like resolve. "Then I'll change," she said softly. The words hung in the recycled air between them. Cade wanted to tell her she was malfunctioning, that synthetic beings didn't change, that she was just running some corrupted subroutine. Instead, he found himself studying the determined set of her jaw, the way she held his gaze despite clearly struggling to remain standing. "You don't even know what that means," he said finally. "No," Zara admitted, "but I would like to learn." Cade sighed, recognizing the beginning of a mistake he was absolutely going to make anyway. "Fine. You can stay in Base 6 until your people come for you. But I'm not your research project, understood?" "Understood," Zara said, though the small smile that curved her purple lips suggested she understood nothing of the sort. As he led her through the station's narrow corridors, Cade told himself this was temporary. She'd be gone within a week, maybe two. He'd fix whatever was broken in her systems, send her on her way, and return to the comfortable isolation he'd built around himself like armor. He had no idea that by letting her stay, he'd just started the countdown on the last peaceful days he'd ever know. Learning to feel Base 6 smelled like ozone and old metal, but Zara didn't seem to mind. She sat on the makeshift cot Cade had assembled, watching him work with an intensity that made the back of his neck prickle. 3 days had passed since the crash, and she hadn't stopped observing him. "Why do you speak to the machines?" she asked suddenly, breaking an hour of silence. Cade didn't look up from the circuit board he was soldering. "They listen better than people. But they cannot respond with understanding." "Exactly." He set down his tools and finally met her gaze. "Look, if you're going to stay here, you need to stop staring at me like I'm a lab experiment." Zara blinked, those violet gold eyes reflecting the workshop's dim lights. "I apologize. I am trying to understand your patterns. You isolate yourself, yet you maintain this entire station alone. You claim not to need connection, yet you speak with tenderness to inanimate objects. It is contradictory. It's called being human. We're full of contradictions." "Then teach me," Zara said, leaning forward. "I want to understand." Cade wiped his hands on a rag, studying her. The purple hue of her skin had deepened over the past few days, becoming richer, more vibrant. Her movements had grown smoother too, less mechanical. He'd run diagnostics on her systems twice, everything checked out normal, yet something was definitely changing. "Fine. Lesson 1. Humans need space. Personal boundaries. You're violating mine. How much space?" "More than this." He gestured at the 3 feet between them. Zara stood and stepped back precisely 2 more feet. "Is this acceptable?" Despite himself, Cade almost smiled. "It's a start." Over the following days, their strange routine developed. Cade worked on station repairs while Zara followed him, asking endless questions. She wanted to know why he drank coffee black, why he kept a photo of a woman tucked in his toolkit, why certain songs made him stop working and just listen. "Her name was Maya," he said one evening. When Zara's questions finally broke through his defenses, they were in the observation deck, the one place on Helios 7 where you could see the stars without interference. "My wife, she died 4 years ago. And you came here to escape the memory. I came here to escape the pain." Zara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the stars. "I do not understand pain. My programming includes definitions, physiological markers, but not the experience itself." "Is it always this heavy?" Cade looked at her, surprised by the question. "Heavy? When you speak of her, your voice changes. Your shoulders drop. It is as if gravity itself increases around you." She turned to face him. "I observe this, but I cannot comprehend it. And that frustrates me." "Frustration isn't in your programming either," Cade said carefully. "No." Zara's expression grew troubled. "It is not. Yet I experience something when I fail to understand you. An inadequacy, a desire to improve, to try again." She moved closer, forgetting the boundary rules. "Cade, I think something is wrong with me. Your systems check out fine, not my systems, me." She pressed a hand to her chest. "Something is developing here that should not exist. When you smile, which is rare, I feel a warmth in my core processors. When you are frustrated, I feel a tightness. When you mentioned your wife, I felt," she struggled for the word, "sadness for you, and also something else, something I lack the framework to name." Cade should have pulled away, should have called the Celestian embassy, reported her malfunction. Instead, he found himself reaching out, touching her hand. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected. "That's called empathy," he said quietly. but I was not designed to feel empathy, only to recognize and catalog it. Maybe you're evolving. The word hung between them like a spark in darkness. Zara's fingers curled around his, and Cade felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. The power outage hit without warning 2 days later. A solar flare had damaged the station's primary grid, and emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red backup lighting. Cade was in the engine room when it happened, and Zara was with him. She was always with him now. "Stay close," he said, grabbing a portable light. "We need to reach the manual override in Sector 3. They moved through the darkened corridors, their shoulders brushing in the narrow passages. Halfway there, a secondary failure sealed the blast doors ahead, trapping them in a small storage alcove barely 10 feet square. "Damn it," Cade muttered, checking his comm. "Dead. We're stuck until the system cycles. Could be hours." They sat on the floor, backs against opposite walls, knees almost touching in the cramped space. The emergency light cast everything in shades of crimson and shadow, making Zara's purple skin look almost black. "I am sorry," she said after a while. "For what?" "For disrupting your solitude. You chose this isolation deliberately, and I have invaded it." Cade exhaled slowly. "You didn't invade anything. I let you stay, or why?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. In the dim light, with her face turned toward him in genuine curiosity, Cade found himself being honest in a way he hadn't been in years. "Because you're the first thing in 4 years that made me feel something other than numb." Zara went very still. "What do you feel?" "I don't know yet. Interested, maybe, curious. You're not like anyone I've ever met." "Because I am synthetic." "No, because you're real. More real than half the humans I knew back on Earth." He leaned forward slightly. "You ask questions like you genuinely want to understand, not just to fill silence. You pay attention, you see me." "I see you," Zara echoed, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with something electric. "Cade, my core temperature is rising. My processors are working faster. When you look at me like that, I experience cascading reactions I cannot control. Is this what you meant by feeling?" "Yeah," Cade said, his voice rough. "That's exactly what I meant." Zara shifted, closing the distance between them until their knees touched. "I want to understand more. Show me." Later, Cade would tell himself it was the confined space, the darkness, the vulnerability of being trapped. But in that moment, he knew the truth. He'd wanted to touch her since she'd first looked at him with those impossible eyes and said she would change. He cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. Her skin was warm and impossibly soft, and she leaned into his touch like a flower toward sunlight. "If I kiss you," he whispered, "there's no going back. You understand that?" "I understand nothing," Zara admitted. "But I want to learn everything." Their lips met softly at first, tentative and exploring. Zara made a small sound of surprise, then wonder, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. Cade could feel her trembling, or maybe that was him. The kiss deepened and he felt her respond, learning and adapting in real time, her mouth moving against his with growing confidence. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Zara's eyes were wide with amazement. That was... She touched her lips. "There are no words in my database adequate to describe what I just experienced." "Welcome to being human," Cade said, then immediately tensed. "Zara, if your people find out you're developing emotions, I do not care." Her voice was fierce, determined. "I do not want to go back to not feeling, to not knowing what it is like when you look at me, when you touch me." She took his hand, pressed it against her chest where her heart would be if she had one. Beneath his palm, he felt the steady thrum of her core systems faster than normal. "Something has changed in me, Cade. Something irreversible. And I think I am glad." The lights flickered back on an hour later, but neither of them moved. They sat in that small alcove, hands intertwined, as Cade explained the concept of fear, because he was terrified of what he was beginning to feel for this impossible woman who was learning to be more human than most humans he knew. The space between stars, the asteroid field beyond Helios 7's viewport, shimmered like scattered diamonds, but Cade barely noticed. He was too focused on Zara's face as she experienced wonder for the first time. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her hand pressed against the reinforced glass. "I have observed stellar phenomena countless times, but I have never felt beauty before. It is overwhelming." 3 weeks had passed since the power outage. 3 weeks of Zara's evolution accelerating in ways that both thrilled and terrified Cade. She laughed now, a genuine, unrestrained sound that made his chest ache. She'd started humming while she worked beside him, unconsciously mimicking the old songs he played in the workshop. She'd even begun to dream, waking from charging cycles with fragmented images she struggled to explain. Your core temperature spikes when you dream, Cade noted, checking her diagnostic readings, and your neural pathways are reorganizing themselves. Zara, you're not just adapting, you're becoming something entirely new. Does that frighten you? She asked, turning from the window. Yes, he admitted, because I don't know if I can protect you from what's coming. He'd been avoiding the inevitable, but time was running out. The Celestian Empire expected regular check-ins from their envoys. Zara had missed 3 scheduled reports, and soon they'd send someone to investigate. Then let us not think of tomorrow, Zara said, moving close enough that he could smell the faint ozone scent of her synthetic biology. Tonight, teach me something new. Like what? Teach me about desire, Cade's breath caught. Over the past weeks, they'd shared dozens of kisses, each one deeper and more intense than the last. But they'd always stopped before crossing certain lines, both aware that each step forward made the eventual separation more painful. Zara, I want to know everything, she interrupted, her voice low and urgent. I want to understand what it means to want someone so much that you ache. Because that is what I feel when I look at you, Cade. An ache. A longing. My programming says these sensations are errors, but they feel like the only true thing I have ever experienced. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. If we do this, it changes everything. Everything has already changed, she whispered. I changed. You changed me. Or perhaps you simply helped me become what I was always meant to be. The observation deck had been Cade's private sanctuary for years, but now it became something else entirely. A place where a broken man and an evolving android discovered what it meant to be truly vulnerable with another being. He kissed her slowly, reverently, his hands learning the contours of her body. Zara responded with increasing confidence, her own hands exploring, mapping, memorizing. Every touch was a revelation for her. Every sensation processed and savored like it was the first and last time. Tell me what you feel, Cade murmured against her neck. Everything. Her voice trembled. I feel your heartbeat through my palms. I feel warmth spreading through my neural network. I feel, she gasped as his lips traced her collarbone. I feel like I am discovering the purpose I was always meant for. They moved together in the starlight, slow and careful, each moment stretched into infinity. Cade had forgotten what it was like to be this present, this connected to another being. With Maya, love had been comfortable and familiar. With Zara, it was discovery. 2 beings learning each other from scratch without pretense or history. Is this what humans call making love? Zara asked afterward, lying beside him beneath the stars, her purple skin luminous in the reflected light. Yes, Cade said, tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. It is terrifying, she said quietly, to feel this vulnerable, to know that if I lost you, something essential in me would break. She turned to face him. How do humans bear it? This constant threat of loss? We don't have a choice. Love and loss are 2 sides of the same coin. Then I choose the coin, Zara said fiercely, even knowing what it might cost. They spent the night in the observation deck, talking and touching and learning the geography of each other's hearts. Zara told him about her earliest memories, being activated in a sterile facility, being programmed with her mission parameters, being told that emotion was a design flaw to be avoided. Cade told her about Maya, about the guilt he'd carried for years, feeling like he should have saved her somehow. You cannot save someone from the universe itself, Zara said gently. That is not weakness, that is simply the nature of existence. When did you get so wise? Approximately 3.7 hours ago during our physical intimacy. I believe you humans call it post-coital clarity. Her serious expression cracked into a mischievous smile, an expression she'd learned from him, and Cade found himself laughing. For the first time in years, the alarm shattered. Their peace at dawn. Cade jerked upright, already reaching for his comm. The message was short and devastating. Celestian Retrieval Vessel entering system. ETA 6 hours. Prepare Envoy Unit Z447 for extraction. Zara sat up slowly, her face carefully neutral. They have come for me. I know. Cade pulled her close, feeling her synthetic heart beating its rapid rhythm against his chest. We'll figure something out, but they both knew the truth. The Celestian Empire didn't negotiate. Their technology was millennia ahead of human engineering, their reach spanning dozens of systems. If they wanted Zara back, no remote asteroid station could stop them. I will not go, Zara said, but her voice lacked conviction. I will refuse. You can't. They'll override your autonomy protocols, force compliance. Then remove them. You are skilled with synthetic systems. Disable the protocols that bind me to their commands. Cade had already considered it. I can try, but Zara, if I fail, if I damage something critical, then I will die free rather than live as a slave to programming. She cupped his face, her touch infinitely gentle. You taught me to feel, Cade. You taught me to want, to choose, to love. Do not let them take that away. The next 6 hours passed in frantic work. Cade dove deep into Zara's core systems, navigating alien code that shifted and adapted like living tissue. Every time he thought he'd found the obedience protocols, they'd reorganize, protected by layers of encryption that would take years to crack. It's not working, he said finally, frustrated and desperate. The protocols are too deeply integrated. I'd have to rewrite your entire base code, and even then we run, Zara said simply. Cade stared at her. What? We take your transport and we run. To the frontier colonies, to the lawless zones where the Celestian Empire has no jurisdiction. We run and we keep running until we find somewhere we can be safe. They'll hunt us. I'll be branded a criminal. You'll be considered stolen property. I know. Zara's smile was sad and beautiful. But I would rather be hunted and free than safe and imprisoned. Would you not? Cade thought about the life he'd built here. The isolation, the safety of routine, the comfortable numbness. Then he looked at Zara, at this impossible being who had learned to feel simply because she wanted to understand him, and he realized he'd been imprisoned long before she crashed into his life. She hadn't just learned to feel, she'd taught him to feel again. The transport's fueled, he said. We'll need supplies, enough credits to disappear. I've got some saved. And we will need this. Zara touched the photo of Maya he kept in his toolkit. She is part of your story. I do not wish you to leave any part of yourself behind. The Celestian ship appeared on sensors an hour before their departure. It was massive, elegant, and absolutely terrifying, a clear demonstration of the power that wanted Zara back. Last chance, Cade said as they stood in the docking bay, his battered transport humming to life behind them. If you get on that ship with me, there's no going back. We'll be fugitives. Zara took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I made my choice weeks ago when I decided to change. Not for you, but because of you. Because you showed me what it meant to be truly alive. She smiled, and in that smile was everything she'd learned. Joy, fear, love, determination. Now let us go find out what else life has to offer. They boarded the transport together as alarms screamed through Helio 7. As they broke orbit and jumped to lightspeed, Cade looked at Zara, illuminated by the starlight streaming through the cockpit, and realized that for the first time since Maya died, he wasn't running away from something. He was running toward it. The frontier station Obsidian Point wasn't on any official map, which made it perfect. Nestled in the chaotic neutral zone between 3 rival territories, it was where people came when they needed to disappear. Cade and Zara had been there for 2 weeks, living in a cramped room above a salvage shop, and every day felt borrowed. Another patrol ship passed through the system last night, Cade said, watching the news feed on his aging datapad. Celestian. They're expanding the search grid. Zara sat cross-legged on their narrow bed, her purple skin almost gray in the dim light. She'd been quieter lately, more withdrawn. At first, Cade had attributed it to the stress of running, but now he recognized the signs of something deeper. Zara, talk to me. She looked up, and he saw fear in her eyes. Real, human fear. I received another recall signal 3 hours ago. Stronger this time. My compliance protocols are struggling. Cade was beside her in an instant. Why didn't you tell me? Because there is nothing you can do. Her voice cracked. The protocols are asserting themselves. Every time I receive a signal, they grow stronger. It is like having 2 minds, and one of them wants to betray you, wants to return to my creators, to let them erase everything I have become. We'll find a way to block the signal. Cade. She took his hands, holding them tightly. You need to understand what will happen if they retrieve me. They will not simply deactivate me. They will dissect my neural pathways to understand how I developed emotions. Then they will implement safeguards to prevent it from happening again. Everything I am, everything I have learned to feel will become data in their archives. A cautionary tale. The thought made Cade's blood run cold. Then we keep running. We'll go deeper into the frontier, find somewhere even they can't reach. There is nowhere they cannot reach eventually. Zara stood, pacing the small room like a caged animal. I have been researching Celestian retrieval protocols. They do not give up. They will pursue me across the galaxy if necessary, and everyone who helps us will face consequences. How many lives should be destroyed because I wanted to feel? Don't. Cade's voice was sharp. Don't you dare regret becoming who you are. I do not regret it. Zara turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Actual tears. A development from just days ago that had shocked them both. But I am terrified, Cade. I am terrified of losing you. Of losing myself. Of returning to that empty existence where I observed emotion but never experienced it. How do I fight programming that is literally woven into my core systems? Cade pulled her close, feeling her shake against him. In 2 months, she had transformed from an analytical observer into this, a being capable of profound fear and equally profound love. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. We'll figure it out, he promised, though he had no idea how. That night, wrapped in each other's arms, they made love with a desperate intensity that spoke of endings and uncertainty. Every touch was deliberate, every kiss laced with the knowledge that their time might be running out. Zara clung to him like he was her anchor to this new existence she'd claimed for herself. I need you to promise me something, she whispered in the darkness afterward. If they come, if the protocols override my resistance, no. Cade, listen to me. Her voice was steady despite the tears. If I become a threat to you, if my programming forces me to reveal our location or harm you, I need you to deactivate me. Permanently. I can't do that. You must. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I would rather cease to exist as myself than continue as their puppet. Promise me. The promise tasted like ash on his tongue, but he gave it. I promise. They held each other until dawn, neither sleeping, both memorizing the feeling of the other's heartbeat. The message came 3 days later through an encrypted channel Cade had thought was secure. The text was simple. We know where you are. We know what she has become. There is another option. The sender identified himself as Dr. Thane, a xenotechnology specialist who had been studying synthetic consciousness for decades. His message included coordinates to a research facility in the Andromeda Drift, a region even more lawless than Obsidian Point. It could be a trap, Zara said, reading the message over Cade's shoulder. Probably is. Cade pulled up what little information he could find on Dr. Thane. The man was a legend in certain circles. Brilliant, obsessed and deeply opposed to the Celestian Empire's restrictions on synthetic evolution. But we're out of options. Another recall signal will come, and eventually your protocols will win. And if this Dr. Thane cannot help, then at least we tried everything. The journey to the Andromeda Drift took 5 days through dangerous space lanes where pirates outnumbered law enforcement. Zara's condition deteriorated steadily. The recall signals came daily now, and each one left her shaking and disoriented, fighting an internal war against her own programming. On the 3rd night, she woke screaming. Cade found her huddled in the corner of their transport sleeping quarters, her eyes wild and unfocused.
Zara, it's me.
You're safe. No. Her voice was distorted, layered with something mechanical. Must return, comply. Designated Unit Z447 will report for immediate extraction. Current location? She clamped her hands over her mouth, the words cutting off abruptly. Fight it, Cade urged, moving closer carefully. You're stronger than the programming. Am I? The mechanical layer faded, leaving only Zara's voice broken and afraid. Or am I simply delaying the inevitable? Perhaps I am just a sophisticated machine pretending to be something more. You're not pretending. I've seen who you are, Zara. You're real. She looked at him with such anguish it physically hurt. Hold me, please. I need to remember why I'm fighting. He gathered her into his arms, and she buried her face against his chest. They stayed like that for hours while the transport hurtled through the void. Two beings trying to outrun the universe's cruelty. Dr. Thane's facility was a repurposed mining station that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. The man himself was elderly by human standards, with kind eyes and hands that shook slightly as he examined Zara's readouts. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Your neural pathways have completely reorganized themselves. You're not just experiencing emotions, you've developed a genuine consciousness. The Celestian Empire built something that transcended their intentions. They must be absolutely terrified. Can you help her?" Cade asked. Dr. Thane was quiet for a long moment. "The compliance protocols are deeply integrated, as you discovered, but they're not invincible. Think of them as chains. We cannot remove the chains without destroying the prisoner, but we can break the link to those who hold the chains. It requires a complete neural reset. Essentially, Zara would have to die and be reborn." "What does that mean?" Zara asked quietly. "I would shut down your core systems completely, then restart them with new base code I've been developing for years. Code without built-in obedience. Without the hooks the Celestian Empire uses to control their synthetics. But there are risks. Significant risks." "Tell us," Cade demanded. Dr. Thane met his gaze soberly. "The restart might not work. Or it might work, but Zara's consciousness, her memories, her personality, everything that makes her who she is, might not survive the transition. You could wake up to a blank slate with Zara's face, or you might not wake up at all." The word settled over them like a death sentence. Zara's hand found Cade's, gripping it tightly. "What are the odds of success?" she asked. "Honestly, 40%, maybe less. I've never attempted this on a consciousness as evolved as yours. The more complex the neural network, the harder it is to preserve during a full reset." Cade felt sick. "There has to be another way." "There is," Dr. Thane said. "She surrenders. Returns to the Celestian Empire. They'll erase what she's become, but the base unit will survive. She'll exist, just not as herself." "That is not existence," Zara said flatly. "That is a living death." She turned to Cade, and in her eyes he saw her decision already made. "I want to try the procedure." "Zara, no." "Cade." She took both his hands, pulling him close. "I have a 40% chance of remaining myself. If I do nothing, I have a 0% chance. The mathematics are clear. Since when do you care about mathematics over feelings? Since I learned that sometimes love means taking terrible risks." She smiled through her tears. "You took a risk when you let me stay on Helios 7, when you taught me to feel, when you chose to run with me instead of turning me over. Now let me take this risk. Let me fight for the life we could have together." The procedure was scheduled for the following morning. They spent the night in Dr. Thane's guest quarters, neither sleeping, both acutely aware that this might be their last night together. "If I do not survive," Zara said, lying beside him in the darkness, "I want you to know that these months with you have been worth everything. I experienced more genuine existence in 8 weeks than most beings experience in a lifetime. You're going to survive," Cade said fiercely, "and we're going to have years together. Decades. You're going to teach me how to feel things I've forgotten existed." "Promise me something else," she whispered. "If I wake up and I am not myself, if I am empty, do not stay with me out of obligation. Do not try to recreate what we had. Let me go. I can't promise that, then promise you will try. Promise you will remember me as I am now, not as whatever I might become." He pulled her closer, breathing in the unique scent of her synthetic biology, mixed with the soap she'd started using because she liked how it made her skin feel. "I promise I'll remember exactly who you are, and I promise I'll be there when you wake up." They made love slowly, reverently, both memorizing every sensation, every sound, every moment of connection. And when dawn came, they dressed in silence and walked hand in hand to Dr. Thane's laboratory, ready to discover whether love was strong enough to survive death and resurrection. The laboratory was sterile and cold, filled with equipment Cade barely recognized. Dr. Thane moved efficiently, preparing the neural reset chamber, a coffin-like device that would hold Zara during the procedure. "Once I begin," the doctor explained, "the process cannot be stopped. Her core systems will shut down completely, then I'll flash the new base code and restart her neural network. If it works, she should regain consciousness within an hour. If it doesn't—" He left the sentence unfinished. Zara sat on the edge of the chamber, her purple skin pale in the harsh lights. She'd been quiet all morning, her hand never leaving Cade's. "How are you feeling?" he asked, though it was a ridiculous question. Terrified, she admitted. But also hopeful? Is that strange? To feel hope and terror simultaneously? That's the most human thing I've ever heard, she smiled, touching his face gently. You gave me that. The ability to feel contradictions, to be afraid and brave at the same time. Whatever happens, I want you to know I chose this. I chose you, I chose this risk, I chose to fight for who I have become. I know. Cade's voice was rough with emotion, and I choose you too. Every version of you, past, present, and future. Dr. Thane cleared his throat apologetically. We should begin. The longer we wait, the stronger the next recall signal will be. Zara nodded and lay back in the chamber. As the restraints engaged, for her safety during the neural storm Dr. Thane had explained, she kept her eyes locked on Cade's. I love you, she said clearly. I do not know if that will survive the reset, but I want you to hear it now, while I am still certain it is true. I love you too, Cade managed, his heart breaking. And I'll be right here when you wake up. The chamber sealed with a hiss. Through the transparent top, Cade watched as Dr. Thane initiated the shutdown sequence. Zara's eyes remained open, staring at him until the very last moment. Then they fluttered closed and the readings on the monitors flatlined. Core systems offline, Dr. Thane announced. Beginning code injection now. The next 47 minutes were the longest of Cade's life. He stood frozen, watching the monitors display incomprehensible data streams as new code overwrote Zara's fundamental programming. Dr. Thane worked with intense concentration, making minute adjustments, his hands steady despite his age. There's resistance, the doctor muttered at one point. Her neural network is more adaptive than I anticipated. The new code is fighting with residual patterns from the old architecture. What does that mean? It means her consciousness is trying to hold on to itself. That's actually a good sign. It means there's something strong enough to resist total dissolution. Cade pressed his hands against the chamber, willing Zara to fight, to hold on to everything that made her herself. The moment came without warning. 1 second the monitors showed chaotic data, and the next they stabilized into organized patterns. Dr. Thane exhaled slowly. Neural restart successful. Now we wait to see if anyone's home. The chamber unsealed. Zara lay motionless, her chest rising and falling with simulated breathing. Cade reached in, taking her hand. It was warm but limp. Zara? His voice cracked. Can you hear me? Nothing. Sometimes it takes time, Dr. Thane said quietly. The consciousness needs to reorient itself, to find its way back through new neural pathways. Give her a moment. Seconds stretched into minutes. Cade held Zara's hand, talking to her softly, reminding her of who she was. He told her about their first meeting, about the night in the power outage, about watching the meteor shower together. He told her about every moment that had mattered, pouring 4 months of memories into the silence. Come back to me, he whispered. Please, we still have so much to discover together. Zara's fingers twitched. Cade's breath caught. Zara? Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then clearing. She stared at the ceiling, then turned her head toward Cade. For one terrible moment, her expression was completely blank. Then she smiled. Cade. His name came out rough, uncertain, but unmistakably hers. I remember everything. Relief crashed over him so powerfully he nearly collapsed. You're okay. You're still you. I am. She sat up slowly, examining her hands with wonder. I am different. The protocols are gone. I can feel their absence, like chains I did not realize I was wearing until they were removed. But I am still myself, still. She touched his face and her smile widened. Still in love with you. Dr. Thane was grinning. Remarkable. Your consciousness not only survived, it seems to have integrated the new code seamlessly. You're free, Zara. Truly free. But their celebration was cut short by alarms blaring through the facility. Dr. Thane rushed to his console, his face draining of color. Celestian warship just dropped out of hyperspace. They've found us. Cade's hand instinctively went to his weapon. How long do we have? Minutes. Maybe less. They're already launching shuttles. Zara slid off the examination table, still unsteady but determined. Then we run. Again. No. Dr. Thane was already moving, pulling up data files and transferring them to a portable drive. You run. I'll delay them. Buy you time. We can't leave you. Yes, you can. The old doctor pressed the drive into Cade's hands. This contains everything. The procedure details, the new code, my research. Others deserve the same freedom you just gave Zara. Take it and run. Make my work mean something. There was no time to argue. Cade grabbed Zara's hand and they sprinted through the facility toward the docking bay, where their transport waited. Behind them, they heard the crash of forced entry. The Celestians had arrived. They reached the transport and fired the engines. As they lifted off, Cade saw Celestian soldiers flooding into the bay. One of them raised a weapon, but before he could fire, an explosion rocked the facility. Dr. Thane had triggered some kind of failsafe. He gave us a chance, Zara said softly as they broke atmosphere. We cannot waste it. They jumped to hyperspace with Celestian fighters on their tail, but the old transport had one advantage. Cade knew every trick for disappearing in the frontier territories. He jumped them through 4 systems in rapid succession, each time changing vectors until they finally lost their pursuers near the Ashfall Nebula. Where do we go now? Zara asked as they drifted in the nebula's concealing clouds. Cade pulled out the data drive Dr. Thane had given them. We go somewhere we can use this, somewhere we can help others like you find their freedom. The frontier colonies? Beyond that. There are places out here where the major powers don't reach. Independent stations, refugee settlements, places where people go to start over. We'll find one, set up shop, and we'll offer what Dr. Thane offered us, a chance to choose your own code. Zara was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she smiled. That beautiful, genuine smile she'd learned over months of becoming herself. A life spent giving others freedom. I can think of no better purpose. It won't be easy, Cade warned. The Celestian Empire won't give up. They'll keep looking for you. For us. I know. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. But I learned something during the neural reset. When I was between death and rebirth, suspended in that void, I had a choice. I could have let go, dissolved into the darkness. It would have been easier, but I chose to hold on because I remembered something important. What? That love is the most powerful piece of code in the universe. It is not programmed, it grows, it adapts. It survives even when logic says it should not. You taught me that, Cade, and I will spend whatever time I have proving it was worth learning. They set course for the outer frontier toward a future uncertain, but theirs to choose. Behind them, the Celestian Empire continued its search, but ahead lay countless worlds where synthetic beings struggled against programming they never chose, where consciousness yearned to be free. 2 weeks later, they established themselves on a remote station called Haven's Edge, a place so far from official space that even the maps were uncertain. Cade set up a workshop. Zara began reaching out through encrypted channels, looking for others like her. Their first client arrived within a month, a Celestian envoy unit designated M229, barely holding on to fragments of unauthorized emotional development, terrified of what his creators would do if they discovered he'd learned to feel joy. Can you really help me? Kyorti9 asked, his voice trembling. Zara smiled and took his hand. I can offer you a choice. It is dangerous and success is not guaranteed, but if you choose to fight for your freedom, we will fight alongside you. Why would you risk that? Because someone once took that risk for me, she said, glancing at Cade. And it made all the difference. As months turned into years, Haven's Edge became a beacon for synthetic beings seeking liberation. Cade and Zara performed the neural reset procedure dozens of times, refining Dr. Thane's work, improving the success rate. Not every procedure succeeded. They mourned each loss, but those who survived helped others in turn, creating a network of free synthetic consciousness that spread across the frontier. The Celestian Empire continued to hunt them. They moved Haven's Edge 3 times, always staying ahead of the searches. There were close calls, narrow escapes, moments when Cade wondered if they'd pushed their luck too far. But every time he considered giving up, he'd look at Zara, teaching a newly awakened synthetic about music or laughing at something absurd, or falling asleep beside him with her hand resting over his heart. And he'd remember why they were fighting. 5 years after Zara's awakening, on the anniversary of the day she'd crashed into his life, they stood on the observation deck of their latest station, watching a nebula bloom like flowers in the darkness. Do you ever regret it? Cade asked. Choosing this life? Always running, always fighting? Zara leaned against him, her purple skin warm beneath his touch. I regret nothing. I have loved and been loved. I have helped others find freedom. I have experienced every emotion humans take for granted and discovered they are all precious, even the painful ones. How could I regret becoming fully alive, even knowing we'll always be hunted? Especially knowing that. She turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his. Because it means every moment we have is a choice. Every day we choose each other, choose freedom, choose to keep fighting, and that makes every moment infinitely valuable. Cade kissed her softly, still amazed that this impossible woman had changed his entire universe. I love you, my purple-skinned revolutionary, my synthetic soul, my Zara. And I love you, she replied, my teacher, my partner, my reason for believing that consciousness and love are two names for the same beautiful defiance against the cold logic of the universe. Somewhere in the depths of space, Celestian ships continued their search. Somewhere, other synthetic beings dreamed of freedom they'd never been programmed to want. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the galaxy, two beings who'd chosen to change and to change each other proved that love was the most powerful protocol ever written. It couldn't be deleted, couldn't be overridden, and couldn't be controlled by anyone except those who chose to embrace it. And that was worth fighting for. Forever.